Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to get inspired? Hold on just a couple of seconds. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your co-host, Nicholas T. Smith, the mythical? I was going to say
mystical, mythical, magical,
manly.
You want to say
Giant, Nicholas T. Smith. And guess what? We have a great show lined up. We're going to be inspired.
Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah.
Introduce our guest today.
I will. Yeah, we've got Jay Miletsky. I've known Jay, about a year now. Jay started a group called the Children's Book Authors and Illustrators Group that's now over 37,000 members. He's a reformed marketing entrepreneur, so it'd be safe to say he's in recovery.
Right? Yes. I'll be in recovery for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And so he shifted his focus to the more challenging and exciting world of children's book writing. And he's a best-selling author of Ricky the Rock That Couldn't Roll, The Bear and the Fern, Patrick Picklebottom, and The Penny Book, and others. He lives in New Jersey with his wife, Amanda, daughter, Bria, and son, Oakland, who are the inspirations behind his books. So you're a phenomenal person. I'm looking forward to diving into your story. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So can we dive in and go back in time for you?
Go crazy.
Yeah, I love it. What was it like growing up for you?
I grew up in, actually, it's interesting. My son's name is Oakland. I grew up in a town called Oakland, and that was not because I'm overly sentimental. That was just my wife happened to like the name, and I happened to grow up there, so it worked out well. But I grew up in Oakland, New Jersey, and I had a fairly typical upper middle class upbringing. I had my buddies. We played football and baseball, and went to a typical high school. It wasn't really anything that you wouldn't probably imagine. I will say that, I grew up, I'll date myself here. I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. So we grew up in a time where kids, where we did things kids can't do now. I mean, I could get on my bicycle and after school, and my mom would say, just be home by dinner, and had no idea where the hell I was going. I just went, sometimes I would go up to the top of the hill. I lived at the bottom of the hill. I go up on top of the hill and wait for my mom to come home from work. And then when her car pulled around, she would stop the car, and I would jump on the hood, and I would car surf until we got to the driveway, which again, you can't do that today, without someone calling DIFUS on you. So, I mean, I got to say, I think looking back, I appreciate the 70s and the 80s in terms of growing up. I think it was a better time.
I pictured just now that you had an alien in a basket flying over the moon. Kind of an upbringing.
If I did, my parents or any parents wouldn't really have known about it because they were all just doing their own thing, and you're just expected to show up when you're supposed to show up, and that was it.
Now, did you go into your field? I'm going to move forward in time a little bit and then go back to that. So did you kind of have a direction in marketing and writing and all of these things when you were a kid, or was that something that evolved over time?
No, I think like anybody, you watch TV and you watch the commercials and you think about how you could do it better, and I think everyone kind of does that at some point. I always used to enjoy that, but I actually wanted to get into investment banking and stocks, and my entire reason for wanting that was because I watched the movie Wall Street. I'm like, holy shit, Gordon Gekko is a bomb, man. I want to be him.
Yeah.
I think even Oliver Stone had said that his biggest regret with that movie was that he didn't mean for Gordon Gekko to be a hero, but everybody wanted to be Gordon Gekko at the time. So I thought, all right, I'm going to go to college to be an investment banker. I want to do what this guy's doing.
Yeah.
And I recognized pretty early on in my college career, I wasn't really digging the economics classes that much.
Yeah.
I followed it through and I became an economics major, but I started a greeting card company when I was in college. I had drawn a birthday card for my girlfriend at the time. She put up on her wall, and someone said, hey, listen, would you be able to draw a card for me to give to my boyfriend or girlfriend, whoever else? I started selling them. And next thing I know, I had a bunch of designs. I graduated from college and I went to a printer friend of mine, and he said, look, if you want to do this, we can print up the cards for you. And I had, I spent the only $2,000 that I had in my bank account. I spent them on a whole bunch of greeting cards. I brought them to the very first store that I went to, and the guy said, these suck. He's like, I got to be honest with you, no one is buying these cards.
Yeah.
He said, listen, why don't you do me a favor? I do need a brochure for my store. Why don't you create me one? So I had nothing else to do. So I said, sure, why not? So I went back to the printer and I said, how do I make a brochure? And he said, and this is back at the time when, advertising agencies were still working with drafting tables, and computers were not really on everyone's desk yet.
Right.
At that point, I had never even seen a full color screen before. I was still working off of the black and white boxy Macintoshes.
Right.
And I went back to the printer and I said, how do I do a brochure? He said, well, your best bet is to get yourself a computer and learn how to use a program called Quark, which is been replaced now by InDesign and Photoshop. So I did just that, and for whatever reason, Photoshop just came very easily to me. And I learned it. I did this brochure. I enjoyed it. I made a good amount of money from it. The guy who owned the store, I realized later on that he really didn't need a brochure. He was just trying to help a kid out by giving me a head start with something. And just a super, super nice guy. But I said, you know what? Screw the cards. I'm going to get into marketing. So I started to I set my own little marketing company. And I realized that I could make a lot more money as a marketing CEO than I could as a graphic designer, even though I was basically doing the exact same thing. The title was different. So I took out a small office and I started doing marketing for anyone who would hire me. And that was kind of that. And in the meantime, for whatever reason, like I said, Photoshop just kind of came to me very naturally, even though I'm not a computer guy. And I became one of the early people to get certified, become an Adobe certified Photoshop expert. And that started getting picked up in different, Photoshop magazines and design magazines. And long story short, one day I got a phone call from an acquisitions editor over at Prentice Hall or Pearson saying, hey, listen, would you be interested in writing a book on how to use Photoshop? And I was like, yeah, why not? I've always enjoyed writing. It was always one of my favorite things to do. I was a creative writing minor in college. And but I said, look, if you're going to do that, let's do it. But you can edit me in terms of tech. You can edit my grammar. You can't edit my voice because I do have a voice, and I'm going to use it in this book, even though it's a how-to book. I'm still going to use my humor and sarcasm in the way that I write. And they were agreeable to that. And so that's kind of where I got started. I started with my writing career that way, and also my marketing career.
Yeah, just a very clear path. It all makes sense, from writing on the hoods of cars to watching a movie and becoming a finance expert to creating greeting cards. I mean, it's just the clearest path I've ever seen.
Absolutely.
Right?
It was all very planned out.
From A to Z, you knew where you were going. It's funny how it evolves, that you start out doing something that you just enjoy or think you'll enjoy, and you find out you don't enjoy it. And then you do something else, and then you find out you're not very good at it. And then somebody else says, the cool thing about it, Jay, is you keep going. Like, you didn't ask the question, like, that's not possible. You didn't say that's not possible for me when the guy said, can you create a flyer? You went and found out how to do that. Just like our last guest on Wednesday, he talked about coming to America from Italy without any English or knowing how to make gelato or doing all these things. And he came to America with no know-how and just figured it out. He's like, I can figure things out.
Yeah, in my mind, I was thinking about the movie Mr. Deeds when he's making greeting cards, and they're not very good at all. He writes hundreds and hundreds of them and submits them every week. That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah. What comes up as you hear that?
I think I think I learned early on that the answer is always yes. If someone says, "Can you do something?" Yes, and then you'll figure it out. Because if you say no, then you're shutting the door immediately. And there's no point in shutting the door. Something is possible. You can figure out how to do it. It's just a matter of taking the time to figure out the right steps. So when someone has said to me, hey, listen, could you do a campaign for such and such? My answer was always, yeah, we could do that. And then, hang up the phone and I'm like, okay, now I got to figure out how to do that. And you make as many calls as you need to figure out the right way to do it. But there's always a way. You just gotta find it.
Yeah, we have a business partner who was just asked to speak. Her name is Rachel Smart. She was asked to speak in a convention nationally, and I think the person that they were going to bring on, Rachel Hollis, was who it was. Huge speaker, best-selling author, powerful person. Rachel Smart, our business partner, said yes to the event, not knowing how she would do it. It's one of those things where she figured it out. There's always a way, right? I think the movie Yes Man, maybe not in that way, but a little different with Jim Carrey. Did you see that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. There's always a way to figure something out, or you'll find an alternative that's just as good, or something, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So at the time, I didn't know how to do a brochure, but I knew a brochure could be done. Yeah. It sounded like something I might be interested in doing. So the answer was, I could do it. and then I'll figure out how to do it.
So did you draw your inspiration from that, from saying yes and diving in? Or were there other things in life that brought inspiration to you as far as your creativity?
I would say from a sales standpoint, in terms of knowing to always say yes. My dad has always been just an incredible sales guy. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time watching him, and I would go to his office and spend some summers working there, and I always got a chance to see him in action. And even later on in life, a couple of years ago, I did the Brooklyn Book Festival, and my dad had come with me, and we had a booth that was, we were fortunate to have a booth where we could sell on both sides of it. And so my dad took one side, I took the other side, and these are my books, my name on it. I've got a T-shirt that says I'm the author, right? So I should naturally be selling my books left and right. The dude is outselling me 3-1. I mean, it's not even his books, but he's just pulling people in. And I don't know if they were buying a book just to get him to stop talking or what the deal was, but whatever it was, I couldn't keep up with him. So I kind of understood from the sales standpoint in terms of always saying yes and figuring out a way. I learned that from him. Creatively, I'm not really sure where I drew an inspiration from. I've always enjoyed, creating stories and creating characters, and maybe it's just because I sucked at baseball growing up, and I wasn't very good at sports, and I was the kid who learned how to juggle because I was never actually put onto the field, so I had nothing else to do in the dugout but to learn how to do something to keep myself occupied. But whatever it is, I've always been more on the creative side, always a little more right-brained than left-brained. I never really had, it was only kind of recently that I really had a good outlet for it. I mean, even in my marketing days, I didn't have as great of an outlet for it because you had marketing directors that had to approve everything. And typically, those marketing directors, if it was for Hershey's or NBA or whoever else, they're not always interested in just doing what's best for the company. They're doing what's in their best interest personally. Right. Like I said, we had 50 employees at our height. And whenever we'd get a new client, I would tell my employees, listen, just remember, we're not working for this company. Our first job is not to get more, people buying this product. Our first job is to keep the guy who hired us in his career for 1 year longer, so he can hire us again next year. And that guy's main goal was to keep his job for 1 more year so he can get his Christmas bonus. I wouldn't say that even in marketing, I had the autonomy to be as creative as I wanted to. It's not until really now that I've had the ability to be really as creative as I want to be.
So was it easy for you? Like no challenges whatsoever? I mean, you talk about some of that, the lack of autonomy, but I'm talking about other challenges in life. What have you overcome to get to where you are right now?
Oh, I don't want to talk about my ex-wife. All
right. Yeah, we don't have to.
Enough said.
Yeah.
I think I just said it all, right? No, I mean the biggest, there's always
they're over there in an interview telling the same thing about us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I don't want to talk about my ex-husband. Right.
There's always challenges. With my marketing agency, we had gotten to, like I said, our height of 50 employees. I had taken out a full floor of a building. We had a game room with pool tables and pinball machines. We spent a shit ton of money on new furniture. And just when the last marble tile was put into the floor, our largest client, Washington Mutual, who made up like 60% of our revenue, just one day went out of business. Back in 2008. And largest bank in the country, you just don't expect it's going to go out of business one day, and that's exactly what happened.
Wow.
And suddenly everything just fell apart. And we had to start over again from scratch. My daughter, who is sitting next to me and actually being surprisingly quiet, she just turned 9 years old, and when she was born 2 days later, she had a traumatic brain injury because she was sick when she was born, and so she has cerebral palsy. So even though she's 9, she can't walk or talk yet. And that's I wouldn't say that's been it's been challenging. I wouldn't say it's been a challenge, but it's come with challenges. There's a lot of emotions you go through in terms of guilt and is this thing I could have done. How am I spending time at work when I should be working? I should be spending time with her to help her develop. But she can't develop if I'm not working and bringing money in. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing that I had to overcome. And also dealing with all the emotions from everyone else around me that comes with it. But I think everyone has different hurdles and challenges they have to go over and get through.
I hear you with her though, and like in your lives, she'll be in the back seat. You're driving somewhere, you're just talking, and I can tell you're a great dad.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she's a very easy kid to take care of. She's very sweet. She loves to work. She loves to try to learn how to walk and tries to learn new words. And she's very cuddly and she knows how to tease and have fun. And, in some ways she's a typical 9-year-old. In some ways she's a 6-month-old. And, I used to think that was, I used to feel bad about that. But you know what? There's part of me that also thinks if I was eternally a 6-month-old where I just knew people around me loved me and cuddled me and cared about me and I never had to worry about mortgages and car payments, it's not the worst thing in the world. Yeah. She's a happy kid, and that's what
I think I agree with you.
I know, right?
You did a post the other day about somebody buying I think breakfast or dinner for you, right? Yeah. And your experience with that. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, that actually was just yesterday. I mean that happens quite a bit. Ever since she was little, I would bring her to a diner on weekends. I have her 50% of the time, and even when I was still married to my now ex-wife, every weekend would come and I would take her out to a diner and we would sit there. And when she was little, nobody had any idea there was anything wrong with her. You couldn't look at her and tell. And still, I'd say 1 out of every 4 times I'd go out, someone would buy our breakfast. And it was largely because, I think just people could just kind of see the love that was at the table and me taking care of her. Now, you can look at her and you can tell she's 9 years old and she's not running around or she's not walking or reading on her own. She's basically sitting in my lap,
right.
And she's almost my height at this point. She's gotten very tall. And, but I'm sitting with her and I'm feeding her and I'm giving her water and I'm making sure she's swallowing and we're talking and we're cuddling and we're playing. And I think people just kind of see the connection that's there. And a lot of people, like I said, like I mentioned in that post, or at least in a comment, that for whatever reason, and I do get it, a lot of parents of kids with CP or with disabilities like my daughters, they don't take them out to diners. They don't take them out, period. They stay home.
Yeah.
Whether it's because they are afraid of being looked at or because they're afraid that their kids are going to not be able to handle the outside environment, whatever it is. But I've never felt that way. I've always been, if I do it, if other people do it, we're going to do it. I take her bowling every couple weekends. We're going to go skiing this winter. I'll find out there's things that she can't do, but we'll find a way for her to do everything that anyone else can do.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. So it's I could see inspiration being drawn from that, but also moving on, just doing life, not letting it impact your life in a way. It's like, I'm going to give her experiences like I would have,
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to shut it down because she has CP. We're going to go out and explore and do what every other kid would do.
Yeah. A couple weeks ago, we had a birthday party for her at a bowling alley, the exact same birthday party you'd have for anyone else. I'm relatively sure she knew that everyone was there for her. But she was there with other kids her age and, friends and cousins and family. And she had a blast. And there's no reason why you shouldn't get a chance to do everything that everyone else does.
So I want to dive back in time here. I love this because it's all inspiration for your books and everything that came after. So 2008 happens. You get divorced. You've got a daughter with CP. Is it okay to say it that way? Cerebral palsy.
Yes, correct. The only thing that I'll correct you on is I didn't get divorced in 2008. Actually, I had met my now ex-wife in 2008.
Okay.
My daughter is just turned 9, so we had her in 2012.
Sure.
I wasn't divorced until 4 years ago, I guess.
Okay, perfect. And so you step out of what you were doing though, and you start doing books, right? You have Ricky the Rock That Couldn't Roll and some of these others. Can you tell us about that transition over to that?
Sure. I mentioned before that I had written a book for Prentice Hall or Pearson, whatever. I don't remember what they were called back then, on Photoshop. And that was the last book that I had written for them or traditionally. So I had written 3 more books for Pearson. And then my acquisitions editor had went over to a company called Cengage, which is a division of Thomson Reuters, and said, "Hey, would you want to continue writing for us here?" And I said, "Yeah, but I'm not interested in writing design books anymore. I want to write books on entrepreneurship, on brand building, on advertising." And so I wrote 8 more that way, through her. But these are those are 300 to 400 page books that you have to write in 4 to 6 months.
Yeah,
and have to get out very quickly because the shelf life is very short. For some reason, one of the books 2 of the books I've written were college textbooks. One of them is for some reason still actually used today because I still get a $12, $13 royalty check every 6 months from book dealers still using it. I've got a whole chapter on the value of MySpace, so you can see how outdated these things get pretty quickly. But at a certain point, it's such a grind writing those kind of books that I just didn't have another one in me, and I just said I'm done. And I guess when my daughter was born and after the years after. One of the things that I've always kind of credited with her in terms of helping her develop cognitively to where she does know a couple of words and she does recognize people around her and everything, has been that I would read her a book every night before bed. And, nothing special. I'd read her whatever books were on the shelf at Barnes & Noble. And, she would learn how to turn the pages, and I would ask her what's the different character, and where is the Power Pot fish, and she would touch them on the page and all that kind of stuff. And, I would, but some of the books I liked quite a bit, and some of the books I thought were pretty bad, especially the ones that were written lyrically. And, as a creative person, as I'm reading these, I would start to think of my own stories and my own characters. And I started thinking maybe I could do this. Just like anybody else who writes children's books. We all think I could do this because we all think it's just that easy. You don't find out until later that's not. But I was curious, just not because I wanted them for myself, but I was just curious to see what books were out there for and about kids with disabilities. And I got very angry very quickly. I was finding books like Presley, the Princess of Palsy. And it was a book about a girl named Presley who was the princess of a land called Palsy. And she was the princess of it in her imagination. And I got to tell you, it bothered me to no end. I'm like, and then I read another one, Princess Panda's Tea Party. It was called The Cerebral Palsy Fairy Tale, about another kid who had a great life in his imagination. And I'm like, I don't want my kid to have a great life in her imagination. I want her to have a great life, period. And I did know other parents of kids like Bria because she goes to school the school with kids with CP, and I know other parents there, and I know that they all feel, a lot of them feel very despondent and very very lost and depressed. And I've never felt that way. I've never had except for at the very beginning. I've always felt very positive about her and her ability to develop. And so I thought, maybe there's a way that I could write a book for kids or about kids with disabilities that's a lot more hopeful. That's not just about, hey, when they close their eyes and go to sleep, they can dream about having a great life, except life sucks when they're alive, when they're awake. I don't want that. So I came up with this idea of Ricky the Rock. And I thought, okay, so all these rocks are round, they can roll all around and have fun. And so Ricky can't because he's flat on one side, right? And I started thinking, this made sense because I knew that I know from my marketing background that if I put, and my publishing background combined, if I put a kid in a wheelchair on a cover, no one's buying that book. People are going to buy children's books that they can relate to or they're going to be fun to read. That doesn't look like a fun book to read, right? Most people, I've never had a kid who's been afraid to come up to Bria, but I've had kids who come to Bria and had their parents say, no, not her, come away, because the parents are afraid. People are afraid of the things they don't understand, right? Yeah. And I don't particularly like it, but I understand it, right? No one wants to think of their kid to be not able to walk or talk, right? And so a lot of parents kind of steer away from that. So a parent of a typical kid is not going to buy a book with a kid on a wheelchair on the cover. Parents of kids like Bria probably aren't going to buy that either because books should be somewhat of an escape. And we live this every day. I don't want to have one more book to where I'm reading about someone else in a wheelchair, for crying out loud. Right. So I started thinking, let me do this in a metaphoric way, right? Yeah. Where, it's a book about friendship and perseverance, but everything also counts as if you peel back the layers a little bit, you see something else. So Ricky is the metaphor where Ricky is my daughter. Ricky is a stand-in for a child that can't walk or talk. Yeah. Really. All the rocks that help him are stand-ins for the doctors, the nurses, teachers, therapists, aides, family. That all helps every single day. And all the times they try to help Ricky to roll and it doesn't work are all the different therapies that we all try that don't work. But you keep on going until you find something where you can make progress. And it's worked because of that. It's worked because most people don't see it as anything other than a book about friendship and perseverance. While a few families, like who have kids like my daughter, they see it as something different. They recognize that this is a hopeful book that my kid can also achieve things as well.
Yeah, wow. When you speak of metaphor, you imagine writing like you said, a book about a wheelchair on the cover. Nobody's going to read it. You write a self-help book for kids, like you can do this, and they're not going to read that, right? You write the way we write to adults, and nobody's going to read it. But you speak in metaphor, and then all of a sudden it fits in so many places whereas before it would only fit in one category. And so I want to hit on that because, I'll have you speak to what's coming up for you as you hear that. But in the metaphor, does that speak to the adult as well? Like their inner child, we always hear this inner child, but that part of them that connects with that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think when you write a children's book, especially, parents are going to read these books to their kids. Yeah. So the parents have to be engaged also. The parents have to be entertained. Yeah. I remember watching Sesame Street when I was little, and there were jokes that I didn't get, and those jokes were clearly intended for adults, because adults are watching them with their kids, and you have to entertain the adults also. That's what made Sesame Street so special, is they understood that it's not just the kid in front of the TV, but the parents are there also, either with them or in the background. So you have to make a book that's going to be interesting for a parent to read to their kids, and a book that the parents believe the kids are going to want to read over and over again. Because
is that why SpongeBob SquarePants, like, I relate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you want SpongeBob. There are some jokes in there that really shouldn't be in there, but they're for the parents. You write a book called Barry the Bully Who Learned to Be Kind. No one wants to read that book. That book sounds like it sucks. It's not like it's going to be heavy-handed. It's going to be just teaching a lesson. I'm not going to spend $18 on a book that my kid's going to be forced to read, and then it's going to stay on the shelf forever. For $18 for a 32-page book, you want that kid to read it over and over and over again. And so if you're too direct, you're too obvious, you're too heavy-handed, because you feel like you've got, as an author, that you've got a message that is so important to the world that you just want to tell people, but you don't want to take the time to find a way to get them to absorb it, then there's no point. You're not going. You have to think about the commercialism aspect of it as well. Yeah. So Ricky the Rock, or the books, the book that I tried to write, are kind of like, getting kids to eat the peas by burying them in mashed potatoes. The kid doesn't want to eat the peas, so you put a bunch of mashed potatoes on top of it, give them a forkful of that. Every now and then a pea gets in there as well. Now they're getting some vegetables without even realizing it. Yeah. It's the same kind of way. I think that works better, for children's books.
I like that. Get your vegetables without realizing it.
I put mine in gummy bear form. Yeah. I take it like little kids' capsules.
Yeah. So this book, you create Ricky the Rock that wouldn't roll or couldn't roll, and then you've got others that came behind it, and really opens the door to doing more of what you enjoy, right? I mean, yeah, going to that. I mean, you kind of had an idea that popped up right when I said that. What was that?
Yeah, I mean, originally I was supposed to be just doing Ricky, and then I started doing well, and I started getting letters from kids, and I started doing more speaking engagements. I started realizing I can. This could be another career, because I was, at the time, my marketing agency had already been sold off to my partner, and I had gotten into media, and I was doing something on the media side where I had a website that was basically just selling ads, putting up a lot of content, selling ads against it. I wasn't really enjoying that too much, but I did enjoy this children's book that I wrote, and I started thinking I could do this as a full-time gig and just really run my publishing company. Right. The other things that I wanted to talk about also, not just the perseverance aspect of disability, but there's other things. So I wrote a book called The Bear and the Fern, and The Bear and the Fern is really a letter to everybody. Other parents. There's a lot of parents of kids like my daughter who, for whatever reason, felt like if their kid doesn't reach a certain milestone by the age 7 or 8, then it's never going to happen. And I never felt that way. If she walks when she's 8, great. If she walks when she's 80, great. I don't care. We're going to keep on trying. There's no deadline. So The Bear and the Fern, again, without actually talking about disability, without ever showing any kind of apparatus or anything, it's that message. It's that, look, it's never too late to try something new. You never have to feel bad about trying something later on in life, or don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. But don't worry if what you want to accomplish doesn't happen right now. It'll happen later. Yeah. So I've always had like messages inside of my books that have always been important to me, and little by little I've gotten some of the newer books have gotten a little more direct. I was at a school where I was reading Ricky the Rock, and we were talking about perseverance. And typically what I do is I'm in the cafe gymatoriums and I'm talking about perseverance and things like that, and I'll be talking to 600-700 kids. And I remember saying, I think I was out in Ohio, and I asked the kids, what is it? Give me an idea of something that you guys have tried that you couldn't do at first, but you kept on trying and you finally did it. And typically I always get, kids raising their hands, riding a bike, playing the piano. And one kid raised his hand and he said that he couldn't score a goal in soccer. Okay, that's typical. I'm like, yeah, but you did it finally, right? You kept on doing it. He goes, yeah, I kept on clicking and clicking and clicking, and I finally did it. And I stopped for a second, and I'm like, clicking and clicking it. Are you talking about video soccer? What the hell are you talking about? In second grade, man. It's a beautiful day out, and you're thinking about video soccer on your freaking Xbox. Go out and play a game, man. And it bothered me to know. And I remember after that, I asked the kids, I'm like, guys, everyone put your hands down. Raise your hands if you like to read. And I got some half-hearted hands up. And I said, okay, put your hands down. Raise your hand if you guys like video games. And every hand went up so enthusiastically. And then for the next half an hour, all these kids wanted to tell me about was their video games they liked, And so I decided to write this book called Patrick Picklebottom and the Penny Book, which was written not to downplay electronics, but to just kind of say, look, electronics has their place in our lives for sure, but books can open up your imagination to things that electronics could never possibly do, And so as I find that things are important to me and that I think should be important to others, I write about them.
Yeah, I like this because you're hitting on frustrations. Like, I'm frustrated that I thought this kid was talking about kicking a goal, but he's talking about clicking a goal. And I'm frustrated about that. So I'm going to write a metaphor that teaches, it's almost like take this the right way. I hope you can hear this. It's the passive aggressive way of getting a message across, right? It's not that it's passive aggressive, but it's so open and neutral in a metaphor that the message is still going to get there, but you're not directly giving that message. Like you were talking about the bully that became kind or the wheelchair, right? So I'm probably using the wrong term there saying passive aggressive, because my book would be totally passive aggressive, right?
I think it's the right term. I only balk because there are some times where I don't want to be passive aggressive. I just want to be full frontal aggressive.
Full frontal aggressive.
Put the freaking Xbox down. You're in second grade. Go out and play, read a book, do something more productive with your life. Then especially when I hear these second graders tell me about how they wanted Fortnite. Oh my God, nothing drives me more out of my mind than that. You're in second grade. You should be playing Fortnite. You shouldn't even know it exists.
But here's what I want to talk about is that frustration led to the creation. Right. Like, your frustration with that thing led to the creation, the inspiration. And so a lot of times we'll look at the frustration, but we'll just get frustrated. We'll get mad and we'll complain. But what I hear in your message is that I took that frustration, I created something with it. So if you're looking for inspiration, let that be a guide. Because some people will ask, they'll say, I don't know what my purpose is. Like, they just have one. Like, Jay Miletsky was designed to write one book, right? That's about how much a purpose matters. It's like Jay Miletsky, he's going to do a lot of things. He's going to surf hoods. He's going to write books. He's going to do finance. He's going to do marketing. He's going to market people that probably shouldn't have their message out there.
I listen to Jay's lives just because they're funny as heck too. Yeah. Like, he's got this way of like telling you stuff that that full frontal aggressive, right? Yeah. And then I change it because I'm not currently I'm not an author, but I'll sit there and think about my life and how I'm applying things and living life, and so I call it the J way.
Yeah, what would Jay do? There you go.
I might adopt that.
Yeah, the J way.
But you're right though. I think a lot of inspiration can definitely come from anger or frustration. This whole last year with COVID, and I'm not going to get into my thoughts on any of it or any of the politics behind it or anything like that. But that was funny. I like that. I just saw the J-Way show up. That was cool. It's almost daily. I got a buddy of mine that I've known since probably like first, second grade. And, he and I would text each other and we would send each other different headlines or media stories that were just, either completely sensationalized beyond what the actual story really was, or they were just biased to the point where, it wasn't information. It wasn't marked as analysis or opinion. It was shown as real, as straight news, but it was clearly written with a very, very distinct bias, or just a story that just was completely fake to begin with, whatever it was. And every day, and it's interesting because we both live on different sides of the political aisle. But the one thing that we can agree on is that, there's a problem with the media. And I don't just mean the mass media. I also mean, we'll be looking through Facebook and I've seen someone who has shown a meme of, an ex-president with a quote next to him, inside the meme. And I will push back and say, hey, do you have a source to show where that person actually said this?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And sometimes if they ever show a source, it's like bobsblog.com. I mean, that's not a source. That's a dude who had $11 and took out a domain and just wrote it there. That's not a source, right? But most people don't care. They don't give a shit what the source is. If it's on the meme, that's good enough. I've had people tell me, well, no, if you don't believe it, then you look it up and figure out, no, that's not my job. You made a claim that this person said this. It's your job to back it up. Yeah. So as my friend and I were talking about all these different things and these problems with how, news and information is disseminated, we were kind of saying, it's not possible to change it at this point. We can't go back to 1970s and 80s media where before there was social media, before there was an internet, before there was a 24-hour news cycle. It's not going to change any longer. So I started thinking, rather than just complaining about it to one friend every day, maybe there's something that I could do about it in my own small way, right? I'm not going to change an industry. Maybe my own small way I could do something. So I wrote a book called Have You Heard the News? And the idea is, again, not to bash the media, but it's to help teachers, give them a tool so that they can teach kids to at least have an open mind and recognize that just because you read something doesn't mean it's true. Think critically about something. Do some research to find out if something's actually making sense.
Yeah.
Find out if the sources that are being cited are actually real, and then make up your minds on whether or not, on what your opinions are, not just let them be dictated to you. Guys, I'm going to just excuse myself for 1 second. My daughter kind of like.
You bet.
I'll be right back.
Yep. So I think that's interesting, Ryan. Like you can take a creation from that frustration, you can make something of it. And I think what I saw a lot of over the past year, especially, is just a lot of complaining, a lot of wrong making, but there were some creations, but very, very, a lot more complaints. Right. And so
you had a lot of people that just froze in fear or didn't move or.
Yeah. Or, they hunkered down or they fought it. What I love about Jay's message is that it's more the, what can I do with this? And how can I, like, if you're going to create a meme, how are you doing?
She said, "Say hi."
Hi. This is Bria.
That's Bria. Can you wave?
Hi, Bria.
Wave to your friends. Wait, can you blow a kiss or wave or something? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Will you really do this to be quiet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I find inspiration in, Jay, is that you had this frustration around the memes, right? It would be easy to just complain and say, look, there's a problem. And if you're going to make a claim like that, go find the source for it, not just some website, and just be angry about that. But then you come back and you say, I'm going to create something that will teach and give people tools so that they can actually make a change in that area.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, it's don't get me wrong. I enjoy complaining as much as the next person. And
you're from New Jersey. Yeah, you're from New Jersey.
Exactly. That's what we do. Yeah. That's what we do best here. My buddy and I will still, exchange on a daily basis different headlines and things that, that we find to be concerning, and we're starting to sound like the grumpy old men who just talk about how life was better when we were young.
Yeah.
But I started with my before I even wrote this book. The first thing I started doing was, as I would see people who would kind of violate what I would think are very simple rules, which are to know your sources. I would start to push back at them one at a time on Facebook, and I started realizing this isn't doing anyone any good at all. All it's doing is making someone dig in their heels even further, and no one's learning anything. So I thought, you know what? I have this ability to have this little platform. It's not a huge platform, but it's a little platform. And I can write these books, and I have the ability to get them out there. And if I can get them into some schools and get some teachers to adopt them, and they can start to use them, not to say that the media is bad. That's not the point of it. But the point is to get kids to, before they get to an age where they are, barraged by media, they can learn how to think more critically. I thought that would be, at least that's my contribution to a problem that I've been complaining about, and I can feel good that I've done something about it.
Well, the human mind it seems to be designed around story, and kids don't fully develop their brain until the age of 25. That's when development starts to really anchor in for them, and then they're independent. And so parents act as a surrogate for that brain, that prefrontal cortex, until it develops for the kid on their own.
Sure.
And so if we're able to take metaphors and anchor those in as stories, I mean, they've been doing it for forever. You go back to the Epic of Gilgamesh, all the way back to 25,000 BC or some 25. Yeah, I think it was 25,000 BC. It was the first story that was recorded. But we've been using stories around campfires, since the beginning of time. And there's something about them that anchors into our psyche, that we remember them and we remember the lessons of them, and we're able to adapt those stories in myriad ways. So there's beauty in that. I wrote here, instead of right making and wrong making, write a metaphor, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think, because there's also, I think that I think that the metaphor part allows us to also do something that a lot of indie authors especially forget, which is to write something that's fun to read. That's the number one thing you have to do with a storybook, is make it fun to read. I have there's a buddy of mine who's a distributor, and he's worked with some New York Times bestselling books and authors before, and
Yeah.
He's been in the business for 20, 30 years, and he put it very well. He said, you know who likes a really good lesson in a children's book? Every indie author who's ever written one. You know, and the idea being that, the message being that, you know, buyers of stores aren't really looking for that. Buyers of the books for their kids aren't really looking for that. It's great if it's baked in. It's great if it's there in the background. But parents are looking for a book that's going to be relatively short. It's going to be fun to read, fun characters, plot driven, so they can read to their kids before bed, put the kid to sleep, grab a glass of wine, and watch the end of Stranger Things. You know, they're not interested in teaching a lesson at 9 o'clock at night when the kid's supposed to be going to sleep.
Yeah.
You know, so if the message is there and it can be baked in and you can get teachers to adopt it because of that, then great. But to be too heavy-handed, you know, so the metaphor part is the commercial part. That allows it to create, you know, something that's fun.
Yeah.
You know, and I've also, even though I do have some books that have got human characters, I do like to have more books with non-human characters, because that allows me to transcend all the things that could potentially hold a book back: race, religion, age, gender. Relax.
Yeah. Yeah.
She agreed with you.
She does. You agree with me?
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
So many things can get in the way, right? You talk about transcending beliefs or culture or race, religion, all these things that can get in the way of somebody really taking in a new information and adopting it. It's not necessarily that they have to, but even to create that opportunity for it, some things will get in the way. I've had it with my book where they talk about socioeconomic status, or, you know, right making and wrong making. Because I use human characters, human-like characters in my story, and that can also get in the way. The color of their skin. Again, it has nothing to do with the color of their skin, but they look at the pictures and they think this is a book about white people. It's not. It's an internal journey, but that can get in the way of them hearing the message.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. You know, I have Patrick Picklebottom, which is you know a good selling book for me, and one that I'm going to be growing on. But again, I run into the same problems. Okay, so Patrick is, you know, he's white, he's a male. It's not a female lead. It's not an African American lead.
Right.
You know, I have, you know, a female in there who is of Asian descent. I have a male in there who is African American. But, you know, you run into all sorts of issues. You know, someone's going to say, well, where is the kid wearing the yarmulke or wearing you know, burqa, whatever it's going to be. And I don't have that when I've got rocks. You know, rocks aren't expected to be male or female or any particular religion or age or anything. You know? And so I just find it easier when you
can't tell the difference between male and female rocks.
You cannot. I mean, you can, but if I tell you how, you'd have to ban this video.
We're gonna have to edit it out of the show, right?
Exactly.
Like, yeah. People will be out there turning rocks over.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, tell me about, you know, and how are we doing on time for you? Are you okay to keep going for a minute? Okay.
Right.
So tell me about some of your philosophies. What keeps you going daily? Like, what are some of your underlying beliefs or values that keep you moving forward every day?
You know, the thing that keeps me moving, I mean, I'm not sure about philosophies or things. The things that keep me moving forward are my kids.
Yeah.
You know, you know, she's, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, with Bria, I always want to make sure that, I've never been in a situation, or I never will be in a situation where there could be a therapy that would help her, and then I'd be in a situation where I'd say I can't afford that. You know, so my biggest reason for things is because, you know, I want to make sure that's never an issue. You know, I saw that you know, I think Elon Musk is developing some sort of a brain chip which should allow to, you know, this chip to like take over for brain cells that are gone. You know. I have no idea if that's ever going to happen, but if it ever comes to fruition and it's expensive, I want to make sure I can afford it. You know, for her.
That's incredible, because I want to talk on that, because people look at it like you should write a book so that it serves the world and serves the community. But by taking care of your needs, you're actually serving the world and the community. Like, you're really looking after your family and your own needs, and in doing that, it serves others. I mean, you're right.
Yeah, you know, that's the thing. For some reason, and I really have never figured this out, and I don't know why. Yeah, thank you. That's great. I appreciate it. Are you done now? Yeah. Okay. You know, I've never understood really why people seem to think that book writing has some different moral purpose than any other commodity, where we shouldn't do it for money. We should just do it to make the world a better place. If I manufacture ketchup, I'm allowed to make money from that. But if I write a book, I'm not supposed to make money from that. You know, and there are a lot of people who seem to think that. And I don't get it. On the way to making money with it, there will be a lot of happy faces on a lot of kids, right?
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yep.
But that can't, for me, that's not the goal. I'm still running a business. I still have my, my people have rent or mortgage to pay. They've got car payments.
Yeah.
I've got, her therapies and things to pay for. My son is going to need to go to college one day. And I'm allowed to want to have a nice life for myself and my family.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure why book writing falls outside of manufacturing TVs or toasters or anything else. And those people have to make money from their products. But I somehow I'm a dick because I want to make money from my books. I don't get that. Can you relax a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is interesting. It's how we create rules for things and how they should be. The reality is when you are able to take care of yourself, then it really does serve, because you're able to get out there and take care of others. If your own needs aren't met, it's really hard to reach out to others. If you're in survival mode, it's really hard to be thinking of anybody else if you're starving.
Yeah, Jay can't do the message that he wants to get out without the income coming in. So you have to run it like a business. You have to get out there and sell books and speaking engagements and things like that, so that you can continue to progress and get that message out.
Right, exactly. And that's also, that's also part of, when we talk about the metaphors before, part of that is if the metaphors make it more likely that someone's going to read it and absorb your message, well, that's even better. If it's going to be too heavy-handed and too direct, no one's going to read it. Therefore, no one's going to hear your message anyway. So there's no real point to that. And I think that you have to look at this like a business. You've got to spend the time on the financial part. You got to spend the time to figure out, what do people want to read? Not just what do I want to write, but what do people want to read? And all that's important. Otherwise, no one's going to get it. Can you relax a little bit? Relax. All done.
I think about Steve Chandler was a mentor of mine. He said, neediness is creepiness. Yeah. And often if we're too needy in our message, or we need people to buy our book or anything like that, it doesn't matter what it is. If we're too needy, then we start to get pushy and we get creepy in our method. Right.
Well, I think a lot of it is, this is, I think this industry has almost no barriers to entry whatsoever. Anybody can anybody can see their dog doing something cute and say, hey, I'm going to write a story about that, because I think everyone want to see it. So you can take a piece of paper, you can draw some pictures, you can write some words, print it out on your Epson printer, fold the paper, put some staples in it. There you go. You got a book, right? Yeah. You go out on the street corner, you sell it. Now you are a published selling author, right? You can be the best-selling author on the corner of Smith Street, right? And that's a perfectly valid claim. So anybody can do it. Whereas nobody can just go out, wake up one day and start manufacturing toasters at scale or TVs or cars. That takes a lot. So I think what happens is, because book writing has no barrier to entry, and because a lot of indie authors don't really know about writing, but they write something because it's cathartic. You see a lot of people writing books about kids with disabilities because they've got a kid with a disability, and they're not looking to really write a book. They're looking for basically what amounts to a free therapy session, because writing is therapeutic, right? And then they show it to somebody, a family member, who says, hey, this is great, when it probably isn't. But that family member doesn't want to tell them that it's not, because no one wants to hurt someone's feelings that way. And so then they start thinking, I can make a career out of this, when they probably can't. And so then you have a whole bunch of people writing books that really aren't legible or readable on a commercial scale. So I think that's part of it. They don't recognize that there's a lot more to it than just having a story that you want to write. There's having a story people want to read. There's understanding the finances behind it. There's understanding, the whole business part of it. This is a business. This is a business.
Right. Yeah, man. Ryan, what comes up as you hear that? I'm going to put you on the spot here.
My hat's off to Jay, because he comes with that full frontal approach. And there are a lot of people that just, that think, that, hey, look, I can do this. I can, I'll just go out and print it on my Epson printer and put some staples in it. But it's so much more than that. And I appreciate that too, because then it also helps me to wake up a little bit to the realities of life, so that I don't starve to death as we're putting together, this business, because what good is it if you can't provide, and you starve and you go into debt, and boom, your book dies with it. There's no good.
Right.
And so you have to get out there, and there's some work involved. There's some strategy, marketing, There's building an audience, and then you got to charge for the services that you do so that you can continue to do it. And that's kind of the biggest thing.
It's responsibility, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have a responsibility to be responsible. It's you have a business that you're running. If it is a business or a book and you want to get the message out there, you can't just give it away because you'll go in the hole and you'll go into debt and then you won't be eating and you'll have other issues, right? Like Ryan and I both work full-time jobs, and I tie this in because we build this, and one day perhaps it'll be enough that we can jump out into it full-time, right? I'd love to see that in the next 6 months, as a declaration. That'd be amazing. Responsibility says I've got to provide for 4 kids. So while I'm building this dream and this vision that I have, for me, it makes a lot of sense for me to do something that provides that income until that other thing grows to the point where that provides the income. But in either case, if I don't have income, I'm not thinking straight, right? So
you're right, because that kind of stress, there's a certain kind of stress or pressure I think that will drive you forward, but there's another kind of stress or pressure that can hold you back. And we're all human, and that kind of stress or pressure can really keep you from doing what you want to do. And if you've got certain responsibilities, you need to take the steps you need to take in order to meet those responsibilities. Until such a time comes that you can shift your focus a little bit. I always find it funny. You guys know that I do a lot of webinars, and one of the webinars that I run is called how I sold 100,000 books in 3 years, whatever it is, right? And I'll charge $25 for it. And I always get people who will leave a comment or send me a DM saying, if you've sold 100,000 books, then why do you need to charge for webinars? Well, because you don't deserve my information for free just because I happen to do well. I'm going to get 100 people who are going to take this webinar. That's money that goes into paying for more therapies for her because she's not a cheap kid. And I still have other bills to pay. And why shouldn't I charge for it? It's business, right? Just because I happen to do well with something doesn't mean that I owe the world free information. So that kind of stuff always surprises me that people will they don't understand that part of it.
Something else came up for me too, real quick, Nick. Sorry. You had done that post about the people paying for breakfast, but in that you saw opportunity. So when you were sitting there and you were handing out some books and talking to some people and sharing, not being cheap and giving some copies so that people could see them and read them and get excited, from giving some books and putting them in some hands of some people, there was a teacher, right? That I think that ordered 50 books. Is that right?
No. So well, first of all, let me just frame this. So it wasn't actually where I saw an opportunity. It just happened that this worked out well.
Okay. Yeah. Tell us about it.
I actually do regularly walk around with a computer bag where I don't have a computer in it. I've just got books in it. So if I see a cute kid, or any kid, doesn't have to be cute, especially when that engages with me or interacts with me somehow, I'll make sure that it's not like I don't ignore the ugly ones. I will make sure that I give them a book. But yesterday I was sitting at breakfast and I asked for the check, and the waitress said someone has already paid for it. And typically they don't tell me who pays for it. And in this one instance, she kind of mentioned that the table over there pays for your meal. So I looked over and it was a table of 6 people, 3 couples. All of them looked like to be in their mid-60s or so. And I gave them a quick thank you wave. And then my daughter and I left, and I took a box of Tyrannosaurus Hexes, and I brought them back. And I have 20 in a box, and I brought them back into the diner because I always keep boxes in my car. And I went up to that table and I said, "Hey, thanks so much for breakfast. Really appreciate it. I don't know if you guys have kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews who might enjoy books, but I gave them 3 copies of Tyrannosaurus Rex, and I knew I couldn't go back in there because the place was filled with kids, and I knew that I don't have it in me to go back into a room with kids with 3 books and not give all the kids books. So I was like freaking Santa Claus in the diner yesterday. I walked around all different tables. I gave every kid a book, and it worked out where I had exactly the amount of books left for all the kids that were in the diner. So that worked out well. As I was walking out, one of the women from the table that I paid for my breakfast came up to me. She said, "Excuse me, are you the author of this book?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, I read it while you were giving them all out to the kids, and I just think it's wonderful. I'm a principal at such and such elementary school, which is about 10 miles away. Do you ever do school events? Talking to the kids. I said, "Yeah, I do that quite a bit." And I said, "But I got to tell you, I do charge for that. I typically ask for, I don't charge an appearance fee, but I do ask for a a guarantee of 50 pre-sales, usually at the cover price of $17.95. But since you guys bought my breakfast, I could bring it down to $15 for you guys. And she goes, that would be more than fine. Would you rather do a virtual thing? We can do that this year. Or if you'd rather do it live, we can do that next year. We'll be doing live events next year. I don't do the virtuals anymore. So I said, I'd rather do it live. Yeah. So we exchanged emails. We said we'll set it up for September, and it worked out really well.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was a nice story, and it was a nice thing that happened.
What I see in that, though, is that you're ready, you're prepared for situations as they present themselves. Like, you have the books with you. It's not like a situation comes up and then you're not prepared for it. You're always going around with books in your car or books in your bag, or at least accessible in a way that you can present that to somebody. No expectation of it going anywhere. It's not like you gave that book out in that restaurant with the expectation that a teacher would hire you to come to a school event or a principal.
Correct. Although that's not the first time that's happened. I've had other situations where I've given a book out to a kid and I've gotten an email back a couple of days later saying, "Hey, thank you. You gave my book to my kid in the diner or whatever the other day. Yeah. My best friend is a teacher at such and such elementary school. I passed it on to her. Do you mind if I give her your contact information because she wants to set up an event with you guys with you?" Love that. So it happens quite a bit. I mean, I've made way more money from that than I've spent on the books that I've given out. So it's a good marketing thing. But I also, when someone does something nice for me, what I have to give back is books.
Yeah, I love that. And there's an opportunity in that for somebody that's listening here. For me, especially, I hear this. I went to California and I copied a mentor of mine in his trip. He called it the Top Hat Tour, where you went out and just met with different people and whatever happened. And I did a similar thing where I mimicked that in a way and just followed the energy of the day, and whatever happened. And my day worked out perfect. I had all these experiences that I couldn't have planned in. Right. And some really positive things occurred out of that experience of just letting go of the outcome and just being present to the situation. Like, if I can talk to somebody or have a conversation with somebody, it's not that I need them to do anything for me. I'm just present in that conversation. But sometimes that conversation opens up an opportunity.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so that's what I hear in this is, don't do things to get things. Do things because that's who you are and that's how you show up. And there is a possibility that there will be a reward that comes from that, but you're not doing it for that reward.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I've often told, I used to get into this argument with my mother all the time that, some of her friends would send me something or give me something for the kids or whatever else. And then a couple of days later, like Marie Barone, the question would always come, when are you going to send that thank you card to them? And I would say, I'm not. If they did it for the thank you, tell them not to give me anything anymore. Because I'm not going to say thank you simply because someone gave me something. If someone gave me something because they want to, great. Happy to receive it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I'm sure that at some point I will give them something back. But I'm not simply going to send a card simply because they're giving me something so I can thank them.
Yeah, it becomes an obligation.
Not real good for me, right?
Relax. Yeah, I want to give to give, not to make it an obligation. Like I need something back from you, right? Yeah, that's so I could see how that opens the door for more things too. I look at your community. You have 37,000 members. You've sold hundreds of thousands of books. Maybe I made that number up, but it's a lot of books. But you're out there serving, and in serving, you're making money. And there's nothing wrong. You have a company that really serves authors and creates a quality book, and you bring them in from overseas, and they're really good books at an affordable price. And that's a service, and you get paid for it. It's like the yin and yang. It's the and life, right?
Yeah, I mean, so the company you're talking about is the IFPC, which is the Independent Authors Publishing Collective. And the idea was, Bria, can you relax?
She's doing amazing, man. We love it.
She's been a good girl.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She's getting to the end.
Yeah, but, we'll wrap up pretty soon here, Jay, and we'll be quick.
The idea was that a lot of people would ask me, a lot of authors would ask me, how did I sell so many books? And I would basically say, look, in order to sell that many, you have to put some money into marketing. In order to put money into marketing, you have to have your costs as low as possible, because there is an upper limit of what people will pay for a children's picture book. And that limit is $17.95, or any book. It doesn't have to be just children's picture books. Yeah. And in order to get that cost down, you really need to print in China, where the quality is high and the cost is low. And as soon as you would say that to people, you would see people's eyes kind of rolling back into their head because that scares the hell out of them. To the idea of printing in China, right? Where you can't see the printer, you can't see it coming off the presses. And then you talk about international shipping, and now you completely lost them, right? Because now that's really scary. You know, you're talking about customs and brokers. So I thought, let me just see if I can open up a company where I can do it for these people, and I can keep the cost down lower than what other companies do it for, so that there is more of a chance of being successful and having a profit. You know, and that turned into, okay, so now I'm doing printing and shipping for people. And then it became a situation where people didn't have a place to put the books, right? And not everyone has room in their apartment for 1,000, 2,000 books. So then I opened up a warehouse. And then we opened up okbees.com. So we have another avenue besides Amazon to sell the books. So it's a little bit of everything, you know, and it's, you know, we started off with, you know, 2 to 3 jobs at a time. Now I think we're working at 22 different print jobs right now, you know, that are all over in China being shipped back over to our warehouses. And I think that we do a pretty good job of keeping the prices down so that people can have a legitimate shot. You know, I never guarantee success, but what I tell them is that we're stacking the deck in your favor so that you can have a better chance of making some money, because if we can keep the price down, you can put more money into marketing. More money into marketing means more sales. And that means you can then parlay that money that you're making into more titles, into larger print runs, all of which are going to go to help put more money in your pocket and grow your business.
Yeah. I look at you as, if I were an investor, I would invest in Jay Miletsky, because he's the guy that can take anything and create with it, because he's willing to go out there and do the work. And
we're selling shares if you're interested.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap up. Is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think that's about it. I think you know, obviously, you know, share my you know, my email or the group name. If anyone has any questions about, you know, publishing, printing, writing, rhyming, whatever it is, you don't have to work with me in order for me to answer your questions. I'm happy to help out. I've had people who've helped me out in the past, and you know, I'm happy. I'm lucky to be in a situation now where I can help other people out.
I'll tell you that is 100% true. So Jay sent out for us, he sent out a link to do like a $10 or a $15 webinar where he would answer your questions, talk to you. It was so cheap. I was like, what's the catch? You know, like, I'm like, this is something's off. Like, what is this? You know? So Nick and I signed up, and we hopped on. We were doing our Kickstarter, and we had some questions, and we asked Jay, hey, what do we do? And Jay gave us the best advice ever, which was, you know, pray. He's like, just, you know, just pray and keep running like heck. Do everything you can think of doing. You just, anything at this point. Just go. Think. You guys are smart. Figure it out. And we did. And we funded our Kickstarter. And I credit a lot of that because it was this pivotal shift in our mind that, hey, we can still do this. It's not over yet. You're not dead yet. It's not over. Go. And so thank you, Jay, for doing that for us and for so many other people, because I see those comments, and I see people hop in there that are struggling and need help and need assistance, and there's no expectation. You hop in there and give, and because you do that, in return, people want to work with you because of the caliber of person that you are. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Just as a not to I'm sure the conversation was probably almost exactly that, but as a fairly outspoken atheist, I probably didn't say pray, but I probably did say keep going.
I actually think we should go back and see if we have that recorded, because I think you might have said something.
I might not have been outspoken.
Not quite literal,
but maybe you should pray. That's even more powerful.
Yeah. Well, Bria and Jay, thank you for being on the show. Bria, you've been awesome.
Can you see your friends?
You say hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
Quick kiss. Can you do it?
She did earlier.
You did earlier? Okay, that's enough. You want to wave? Can you wave? Bria. She likes her name.
Oh, nice.
Pretty
name. Oh, good wave.
Oh, there we are. Hi, Bria. Well, thanks for being on. For those that get to watch this, check out Jay. Learn more about his group, Children's Book Authors and Illustrators, on Facebook. Go to iapcbooks.com and learn more about him there. And then also just keep being giants, man. Go out there and man or woman, whatever. So we can transcend that. Just go out there and be a giant. Take those small feelings, small emotions, small behaviors. My daughter's wanting to come on here. She's halfway in. You say hi there.
Oh,
I got no shirt.
So keep doing giant things. We'll see you in the next video.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, buddy.